This is Qtv News and I am Jena Bosonko. Thanks for joining us. First, the main local and sports news headlines. President Barrow's Meet the People tour continues and he warns people not to sabotage his efforts to develop the country. On Wednesday, the National Assembly approved the 2021 appropriation bill with a budget of over $22 billion. A civil society organization has estimated how the lives of at least 380,000 rural inhabitants could have been impacted by the loan scheme $54.4 million NAMS approved for themselves. On World Humanitarian Day, we hear how a Gambian organization is commemorating the day. In business news, a tax seminar for members of the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce, organized by the Gambia Revenue Authority, was held to educate business women on the Gambian tax system. In international news, Ghana's president wins a second term in office. In sports news, Gambia's Football Federation has issued its response to the fine imposed by CAF over the airport incident around their AFCON qualifier against Gabon. And on the same matter, CAF has issued clarification as to why it imposed a fine on Gabon's federation for the actions of the team's captain. Those were the main headlines, and now the news in detail. Do stay with us. Thank you for joining us. Now the local news in detail. Now, President Adama Barrow says he is on course to achieving his development aspirations for the country, as he warns against anyone bent on undermining his development targets. He made this statement on Wednesday during a well-attended meeting in Farafenye and Darurirwan in the North Bank region. Aliu Sise has the rest of that.
This is the atmosphere here in Parafene, where the president has just arrived for his constitutionally mandated nationwide tour. People have come out in their numbers to welcome the president to this commercial town. And it promises to be an interesting meeting because the people of this settlement, which does not only host Gambians, but people from other countries, address a lot of issues affecting the people of the commercial town and those around this end.
On day 3 on his ongoing Meet the People tour, President Barrow said he believed he was chosen by God to lead the country and change people's lives. He warned against anyone bent on undermining his development aspirations and projects, as he chronicled what he calls the numerous projects and initiatives by his government since 2017. He pointed out the numerous completed and ongoing road infrastructure projects across the country and the under construction university campus in Faraba that will see the inauguration of the first phase in April 2021. He informed the Farafenye meeting that his government, for the first time, had also increased civil servants' earnings by 50% and 100% for pensioners. On road infrastructure, he told the cheering crowd that the previous governments were only able to build 800 kilometers, but his government is able to build 600 kilometers so far in less than 4 years. Recognizing the critical role the people of Badibu played in the change of government, he calls on them to embrace his government and do away with opposition. He assured them of more life-changing projects. According to him, there can't be meaningful development without people's participation. I want to leave a good legacy so that after my presidency, people will continue to celebrate my development projects, he told the people. The huge turnouts at the meetings, he said, is a clear manifestation of people's appreciation of his government and the ongoing development projects. Lamin Diba, the Minister of Environment, said the government had provided 3 fishing boats to the communities of Central Badibu. In terms of the importance of vegetation, Minister Diba urged the people to preserve the natural cover. At the Darurilwan meeting, Dr. Ahmad Lamin Samate, Minister of Health, said the Darurilwan Health Facility will be expanded and provided with an ambulance.
ñim banko kan pour ka min deda ku do rube la fala bundol be la fala je pour ka wuludu la lafa katu la fala sai loptano loptani ase wuludu la soto.
As in other meetings, the concerns were similar at Farafenye as locals appeal for more roads, water, electricity and improved health service delivery.
Kurang julo tam ta saate jamal na saate o kundo amanji saate o kono soxla nañ ndox
Nonetheless, they appear pleased with what they call government's efforts to transform the country as they ask President Barrow of their support. Reporting for Qtv News from Janjambure in the Central River region, I am Alu Sise.
On Wednesday, the National Assembly approved the 2021 appropriation bill with a budget of over $22 billion and a total deficit of over $5 billion as part of efforts to strengthen the country's capacity for domestic revenue mobilization to finance the deficit. The Gambia has announced new tax expenditure reforms for the 2021 fiscal year. Here is an excerpt.
Part of reforms plans for 2021, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs seeks to develop a comprehensive tax expenditure policy (TEP) to strengthen the country's domestic revenue mobilization capacity. This will be achieved through a set of comprehensive reforms that will not only focus on policy design, but also deals with governance, monitoring, and administration of tax expenditures. Over the past 3 years, tax expenditure have dampened domestic resource mobilization, costing the economy an estimated 6% of GDP. In 2019, revenue losses due to waivers was $2.5 billion. If incorporated into the budget estimates as an appropriation item, this would be the highest line item in the budget for which revenue is allocated to, surpassing the basic education and health social sector, which should be giving priority in resource allocations. The tax expenditure policy document, which has been approved in principle by Cabinet, will be the guiding framework of which the tax and duty exemptions are granted. Additionally, the GIPA Act is being revamped with the objective ensuring that SICs are only issued on actual investments and job creations. This revised act will provide an adequate monitoring framework for all SIE's beneficiaries. As part of the expenditure of the tax expenditure reforms, the ministry is implementing the following measures. It's recommending to implement. Any contract or agreement with a duty or tax exemption section that is without consulting, that is signed without the consultations with the written approval of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs will not be honored.
The Gambia Food and Nutrition Organization on Thursday commemorated this year's 16 days of activism on the theme Orange the World, Fund, Respond, Prevent and Collect. This was alongside raising awareness on the rights of refugees in the Gambia with regard to GBV. Ajibintu Drame has the rest of that.
As the 16 days of activism is commemorated, today also marks World Human Rights Day. The day is used as an opportunity to reflect and seek for the way forward for a tranquil and better nation and world. This year's event is impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and focuses on the issues of GBV in relation to the rights of refugees in the Gambia. According to reports, the prevalence of GBV has surged during the COVID-19, as countries issued lockdown measures compelling victims to endure and live with their perpetrators, leaving them to dwell in trauma. Closer to home, issues of gender-based violence are hardly reported for fear of being stigmatized or ousted by society, with women and girls the most vulnerable. Falu Sow, the coordinator of the Network Against Gender-Based Violence, called for a collective response to protect the rights of women and girls and eradicate the occurrence of GBV.
Because of this violence, our own self, because it's us who violate us. And if we decide not to violate anybody, then we would all be safe and we would all be having profit from this and gains. So we want to thank you once again and to say that this is a day that we should all have to say that we would do our best to ensure we protect our rights as human beings, but we protect the rights of other people, because today is World Human Rights Day. So no one should from today inflict or violate the rights of any other person in this world, particularly the Gambia.
Mustafa Mbai, a communication specialist with Child Fund, says children and women should be prioritized and says laws should be enforced and implemented to address this issue of GBV.
Also call on government and all relevant stakeholders and partners to ensure that laws, legislation that are put in place to protect children and women are enforced, so that we will realize the goals of our hard work that we're doing every day.
Yusufa J. Gomez, the executive director of GAFNA, encourages more stakeholders and the public to participate in the prevention of and response of SGBV by reporting incidents to the right authorities.
We need to stand united in the fight against gender-based violence and thus protect women and girls who most of the time fall victims in the hands of men as a result of power inequality. Therefore, I challenge each and everyone here present to contribute your own quota in your own way to put an end to sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls.
GAFNA has supported refugees in the Gambia in both the rural and urban communities in the form of cash-based intervention for business activities in order to enable them to be self-employed. Alex Neguri, a refugee from Côte d'Ivoire, who has spent almost 2 decades in the Gambia, says the lack of reporting issues and talking about it is a major challenge for the refugees, urging them to speak out in order to address this situation.
We in Africa, so in particular, you should understand the context, and violation is not something that is more speaking out, especially if it's the ladies. She said I will be systematized, and so they normally keep quiet and bear the pain. So it's very hard for the refugees as well to voice out what they'll be going through.
Qualified refugee students are supported with scholarship packages to pursue tertiary education through the Daffy project. A World Bank report in 2019 reveals staggering numbers on violence against women, stating 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence. 7% of women have been sexually assaulted by someone other than a partner globally. And as many as 38% of murders of women are committed by an intimate partner. Also, 200 million women have experienced female genital mutilation or cutting, which also is a form of gender-based violence. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
We will go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, we will take a look at some more local news, business, international, and sports. Stay tuned. Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News. Now, Alhaji Gaye, a former member of the Presidential Guard to the first President, Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara, narrated to the TRRC on Thursday how he enrolled in the army when he witnessed in the 1994 coup before his retirement and subsequent arrest by the NIA in 2011. Babakar C is following the proceedings and he files in the report.
Alhaji Gaye began his testimony with a rundown of his education background and his enrollment into the military, rising to become a Presidential Guard officer responsible for the protection of President Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara. Mr. Gaye recalled the incident of 1994, during which soldiers organized a coup that removed the sitting president. He also narrated to the commission the role he played with other officers to escort Sir Dauda, who left the country via the sea to Senegal. Alhaji Gaye said he continued serving in the army until 1998, when he left the country for the US and later returned years later, only to be arrested in 2011 and taken to the NIA. The witness said he spent 3 nights at the NIA in a cell before he was transported to Tangier in what he believed to be a secret detention center. He said he was handcuffed, made to lie down, and his head was covered with a plastic bag.
And they took a nylon bag and placed it over my head. I was made to lie down. And that's the time when they started beating me, torturing me. It was very painful. And a lot of blood came out of my body. The whole place was blood.
The witness said he was beaten for 5 hours and told to speak without telling him why he was arrested. He said he was tortured for 5 days in a row and only to be asked by the NIA what did he tell Lamin Kababajo and the head of the NIA. The witness said he repeated to the NIA that he told Kababajo, who was at the time serving as a minister, that the president should release those he arrested and sentenced to death, and that the accusations against them were false. The witness said while in detention, the NIA went to his house to conduct a search when someone informed them that he, Alhaji, was training some rebels in Casamas, preparing to overthrow Jammeh's government.
But American government.
That the American government,
you must sponsor.
They sponsored me.
Train rebels in Casamas.
I'm training rebels in Casamas. So that I can overthrow Yaya Jammeh's government. They gave me a gun. And I left these guns in my house inside the ceiling. The witness said after the searches and investigations into his issue, nothing was found against him and was released after days in detention and severe torture. Babu Karsi, Qtv News.
A civil society organization has estimated how the lives of at least 380,000 rural inhabitants could have been impacted by the loan scheme $54.4 million NAMS approved for themselves.
The National Assembly members, with a few exceptions, had voted to access a $54.4 million loan scheme, which according to the NAM that had proposed it, would enable NAMs to build their own houses and to prevent them from being corruptible.
What we are doing, we have the power to do, and I see there is a need for us to do it, and I would propose we put it to a vote. It's for the members to decide. I don't think anyone else can decide for us.
The majority of the NAMs had voted in support of the loan, which a civil society organization called Gambia Participates have given a mathematical breakdown of how the money could have been channeled to effect changes in the lives of at least 380,000 rural inhabitants.
So we contacted civil engineers and then the committees that we've been working with. And when we contacted these civil engineers, we realized that $31 million could have constructed 40 boreholes. And these 40 boreholes, you're going to have 10 in Central River Region, 10 in Upper River Region, 10 in North Bank Region, and 10 in Lower River Region. In total, 300,000 people in these 4 regions could have benefited from these 40 boreholes that could have been used from the $54 million that they are putting into their personal pockets.
Access to basic healthcare services remains a challenge to many Gambians. Rural communities are mostly affected due to inadequate access to transport, decently equipped health centers or hospitals. It is a problem the Minister of Health had confirmed before NAMS when he narrated the experience of a pregnant woman who had narrowly escaped attack by a hungry wolf on her journey to a hospital for labor.
The horse was running because the horse itself was very afraid. The pregnant woman almost fell off the horse cart, and that was just about a month ago. So these things are still happening in Gambia, and we think it is not acceptable. We want women to deliver in their own health facilities.
Ironically, a day after that, the NAMs would exercise their authority and vote to access a $54.4 million loan for their personal development, a step which some critics have described as illegal and untimely for a country that is on a path to recovery from an economic crisis that has severely affected the lives of most taxpayers.
We also look at communities that actually do not have access to basic healthcare, right? You look at Sarebojo, almost 30,000 or 35,000 people within that surrounding do not have access to basic healthcare. They get diagnosed once in a month. And if you're sick, that actually means you have to wait for the clinic day in order for you to have access to basic healthcare. You look at Jara Sukuta in LRR. You look at Chajeli in CRR. You look at Berending. These are rural communities that are really in need of a health post. And we realized that from this 54 million, if you have 20 million, right, that could have built 4 standard health posts, and then you use the 3 million to equip these health posts for the time being, and then you're going to have a nurse that will be there 24/7 that will be responding to health emergency in those particular communities.
To sum it all up, and going by this calculation, hundreds of thousands of taxpayers could stand to have a share in or benefit from the $54.4 million.
23 million into health posts, 31 million into 40 boreholes. In total, you have 380,000 people that could have been benefiting from this. And as a result, you are now addressing one of the most challenging issues that these particular communities are facing.
The Gambia Participates is a youth-led civil society organization that focuses on enhancing transparency and accountability in the public sector. They are involved in anti-corruption advocacy by exploring modern digital tools and other methods to track the expenditures of the government and to engage people in taking an active interest in these expenditures. Mahmoud Lamin Choi, Qtv News.
Now on to some business news. A tax seminar for members of the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce, organized by the Gambia Revenue Authority, was held to educate business women on the Gambian tax system. More in this report. The tax seminar is in accordance with GRA's stakeholder engagement strategy to educate and sensitize stakeholders, taxpayers and the general public on tax policies, revenue laws and relevant tax administration matters. Research reveals that tax compliance is enhanced when there is adequate tax education. Tax education increases the knowledge level of taxpayers with regards to technical skills needed to determine the tax liability and awareness of tax regulations.
Too often, tax is sort of a mystery to many, not only women. So our purpose really today is to demystify taxation to the women. Tell them what it is all about, the laws, its application, how to go about it, so that we become good citizens, be paying taxes. That's all we want for today.
The Gambia is a tax-based economy, and that means tax is a major part of the means through which monetary resources are mobilized by the government for the execution of projects and programs. Sufficient tax revenues make many government projects possible, and the tax collected from businesses constitute a vital amount of the total taxes yearly.
Better understanding of tax matters by the members is likely to engender better record keeping, filing, and payment of taxes. So this will undoubtedly go a long way to boosting the GRA's revenue mobilization efforts to fund the implementation programs of government.
If corporate tax rates are lowered, businesses may be encouraged to produce more products and offer more services. In Ireland, startups are granted 100% tax exemption for the first 3 years. Can GRA offer a tax exemption for certain women-led businesses for some time to allow them to grow?
Talking about women businesses, because tax actually is paid on the profit you make. So once you can account your business, you know how much you how much you spent. You take the income you earn minus how much you spent to generate that income. Whatever the balance is a profit. That is what is taxed. So now if it doesn't come up to $24,000, obviously you don't pay anything, and also if you make loss, you don't pay anything. So that's why it's very important for this tax seminar to happen, so people can understand that you are not taxed immediately when you start business. There's a lot and lots of tax breaks in the system which enables someone to grow.
The GWCC is a non-profit, non-political, member-driven organization seeking to facilitate business development and trade for Gambian women, providing opportunities and visibility, educate, empower, mentor and promote women-owned businesses, as well as foster meaningful relationships amongst members. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jenna Basongo. We will take another short commercial break, and when we come back, we will take a look at international and sports news. Do stay tuned. Welcome back from that short commercial break. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News. Now on to some international news. Now, Ghana's election has ended with incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo securing another 4-year term in office. Announcement of his win was made by the Ghana's Electoral Commission on Wednesday. In an echo of the American presidential contest, his defeated opponent has made accusations of foul play, saying he plans to appeal the result.
Since the announcement of the incumbent president Nana Akufo-Addo's victory, tensions are rising, and as a result, 5 people have lost their lives in the process. To many, this is a shocking development, as Ghana, along with Cape Verde, is seen as among the strongest for democracy and peaceful elections in West Africa. According to Ghana's Electoral Commission, the 76-year-old Akufo-Addo, who is from the centre-right New Patriotic Party with 51.59% of the votes, has beaten his opponent and presidential predecessor John Dramani Mahama of the centre-left National Democratic Congress, who polled 47.4%. According to the Electoral Commission, more than 13 million ballots were cast out of an electorate of 17 million across 38,000 polling stations throughout the country. In addition to the presidential election, voters also choose 275 lawmakers for the National Parliament. One of the more serious developments is that the National Democratic Congress have said they plan to appeal the Electoral Commission's decision, as they accuse the sitting president of using the military to intimidate voters because they were deployed in some regions. Ghana's recent small outbreak of electoral violence is unusual, as the country has held peaceful elections for many years. This is in contrast to many West African countries like Guinea and Sierra Leone, where electoral violence has been common in recent years. There have been reports of a handful of incidences of intimidation. More disturbing have been reports of 5 people being killed in the post-election violence. Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, Akufo-Addo's information minister, also condemned the accusations of foul play as false and irresponsible, adding that Mahama's comments mirrored that of the US President Donald Trump, who also lost in November elections but accused his rival of stealing the election. And again, failure to accept the outcome of the result from the Electoral Commission could hinder the country's democratic credentials, he added. On the parliamentary votes, NPP Secretary General John Boadu told DW that it is obvious from the results declared across the constituencies the NPP will maintain a majority in parliament. If this proves correct, it will strengthen the president's hand in delivering on his agenda. Answana Isonyasi for Qtv News.
Now on to some sports news. The president of Gambia Football Federation has reacted to the CAF Disciplinary Committee's decision to impose a $5 million fine on the Gambia for allegedly causing distress to the Gabonese team, players and delegation hours before last month's AFCON qualifier. And Sumana Isonyasi has the rest of that.
Reacting to CAF's decision, GFF President Lamin Kawabajo called the decision biased, saying the federation is disappointed that despite presenting credible evidence before CAF's disciplinary body, the country received an unfair judgment, revealing that they will appeal the decision and that he is hopeful of a positive outcome. further stating that GFF totally disagrees with the decision.
I could say we are disappointed, and we totally disagree with the decision. We are not really, it's not fair. It doesn't represent, it's not based on the facts that were presented to them from our side. So basically that's what we didn't agree with it, and then we are disappointed. To the CAF Appeals Board, which is another layer of the process to seek for redress.
The GFF president also had kind words for members of the public for the overwhelming support in protest at CAF's decision. But
the Gambians and the show of solidarity and encouragement in the process has been unprecedented. We really want to tell them we will not relent in our efforts. We will also fight it to the last possible level where we can. You go into the appeals board, and if God forbid we didn't get what we want, we can proceed to the next level.
In a statement this week, CAF announced it has imposed upon the GFF a fine of $100,000, of which $50,000 are suspended on the condition that the GFF is not found guilty of a similar offence within a period of 24 months. However, GFF maintains its innocence. Meanwhile, Kababajo has also expressed optimism about the country's chances of qualifying to its first ever AFCON, adding that the Federation will continue to provide necessary support to all categories of our national teams. On the uncertainty concerning the upcoming WAFU Under-17 tournament scheduled to start this weekend in Freetown, Kababajo says GFF is yet to receive any formal communication as to whether the competition will go ahead as planned. For now, it remains uncertain whether the tournament will take place. When we contacted the Sierra Leone Football Association, the host of the Under-17 competition, they told Qtv that they had not received confirmation from CAF or WAFU as to whether the tournament would proceed. Answane Sonyasi for Qtv News.
African football's governing body CAF has issued a clarification following a press release from Gabon's Football Federation in reaction to the fine imposed on them by CAF's disciplinary board. More in this report.
The CAF Disciplinary Board imposed a fine of $10,000 on the Gabonese Football Federation in the case concerning the match Gambia-Gabon during match day 4 of the Total African Cup of Nations, Cameroon 2021 qualifiers. The clarification states, and I quote, "The player Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has publicly posted on his Twitter account an image translated by the jury as a middle finger gesture directed at CAF in order to remove an ambiguity on the target of his message. The author has taken care to tag or mark the CAF at CAF Online. The independent jury found the content offensive and degrading and likely to damage the honor and image of the African Football Confederation. The jury therefore does not sanction the legitimate protest of Mr. Aubameyang following the unfortunate incident, but this public outing of a great figure in world football whose behavior is regrettable. According to our research, this post is no longer visible on the player's account. As a reminder, the Confederation, seized of this incident, directly regretted it and promised sanctions through a press release from its General Secretary." End of quote. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
Before we end this news bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. President Barrow's Meet the People tour continues, and he warns people not to sabotage his efforts to develop the country. On Wednesday, the National Assembly approved the 2021 appropriation bill with a budget of over $22 billion. A civil society organization has estimated how the lives of at least 380,000 rural inhabitants could have been impacted by the loan scheme $54.4 million NAMs approved for themselves. On World Humanitarian Day, we hear how a Gambian organization commemorated the day. In business news, a tax seminar for members of the Gambia Women's Chamber of Commerce, organized by the Gambia Revenue Authority, was held to educate business women on the Gambian tax system. In international news, Ghana's president has won a second term in office. In sports news, Gambia's Football Federation has issued its response to the fine imposed by CAF over the airport incident around their AFCON qualifier against Gabon. On the same matter, CAF has issued clarification as to why it imposed a fine on Gabon's federation for the actions of the team's captain. Well, that is all we have for you in this edition of QTV News. Do join us at 10 for another bulletin. Thanks for watching.